If you have been struggling with insomnia, I know how difficult it is to truly know how to actually kickstart your insomnia recovery. You're probably asking your doctor for advice, your friends for advice, Google, ChatGPT, and you see all this conflicting advice as to how to actually recover. Should you take sleep meds? Should you perfect your sleep hygiene? Should you do CBT-I? The list goes on, and oftentimes all of these things maybe don't even work, and maybe that's leaving you even more kind of lost and confused. And I want to help you, and in today's video I'm going to do precisely that. I'm going to break down 5 actionable things that you can start doing today that are actually going to help you with insomnia recovery. And I know that because I'm a recovered chronic insomniac myself. I have been where you have. I've been to the doctors, I've consulted with Google, and I've consulted with everybody around me. And now, as a certified sleep coach, I know it actually works, both from my own recovery and also helping my clients every single day. And look, it's definitely not easy. I know insomnia is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through, but I also truly know that education is power when it comes to insomnia. Oftentimes, we're not really even given the right education, and I want to empower you to take insomnia recovery into your own hands, because the more you know about insomnia, the more you understand your own attitudes and behaviors around sleep, the easier it's also going to be to actually break the cycle. So let's get into it. The first thing that I am going to recommend, and I have already somewhat alluded to this, is education. The number one thing that you can do for your insomnia recovery is to truly learn about the cycle of insomnia. What exactly is insomnia? How is it perpetuated? How are you keeping yourself in the cycle? And if you haven't watched some of my other videos, then I can briefly explain that insomnia is the perceived threat of wakefulness. Perceived meaning that it isn't actually real. So our body and our brains can identify things as potential threats, knowing that our primary focus as humans is always to keep ourselves safe, either from a present threat or something that's going to happen in the future. Because we have identified that not sleeping is something that is going to cause us harm, our body and our brain is deploying our fight or flight signals that is keeping us awake in order to fight that thing. Hence, you cannot sleep. So it's almost like a paradoxical problem. You try and control sleep, you try and make it happen, but the more you try and make it happen because you're trying to avoid this one thing, the less it's going to happen. And once you start actually understanding that this is the cycle of insomnia that is truly connected to our behaviors and our attitudes and our thoughts around sleep, the more you can start pinpointing, okay, this is where I have a bit of a disordered view towards like my sleep. This is where I think that it needs to be controlled, or this is what I fear most, in order to actually start kind of turning the tables around and teaching your brain and your body that the thing that it has perceived as a threat isn't actually a threat. And I'm not going to get into it in too much detail, but you may be wondering, well, it feels very threatening right now. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm not discrediting that the fear isn't real. And that's the thing. It's our brain just doesn't know it's real, but everything that you're experiencing, your thoughts, your emotions around sleep, that huge amount of anxiety or fear, or I don't know, maybe even bewilderment, that's all a very normal part of insomnia. And the thing is, it is felt very real in the present moment. You're experiencing a potential future threat, or like what's going to happen if I don't sleep, what's going to happen to my job. And you're experiencing all of that fear and all of that emotion in the present moment, even though it's this hypothetical future thing. So yes, the fear is very real. Yes, the feelings are very real. But the way out of insomnia isn't to avoid this. It's to slowly and gently reteach ourselves that the thing that we're fearing most is an illusion. Step number 2 is to understand your sleep efforts, meaning, are you doing anything to make yourself sleep? So when we have a perceived threat of wakefulness, we then kind of have this impression that sleep needs to be controlled, that sleep is this fragile thing that unless we get involved, it's not going to happen, when in fact, the opposite is true. Sleep is a completely passive process that actually happens in the absence of effort. And insomnia makes us believe that we need to take supplements, or we need a completely dark room, or we need earplugs, or we need to sleep during a certain window. If not, sleep is not going to happen. And all of these things are actually classified as sleep efforts. And I'm not saying that you need to remove any of these things. I want you to become aware of these things. Are you doing anything to make sleep happen? And you may also wonder, like, okay, how do I actually know that? And you can begin by asking yourself, I don't know, take a look at your evening routine or even things that you do during the day. Are you actively doing something or actively avoiding something out of the effort of making sleep happen? Are you avoiding coffee at 3 p.m. because you are absolutely terrified that it's going to affect your sleep? Yes, it could 100% cause sleep disruption. That is normal. But insomnia is quite different. Is it going to cause an emotional reaction to your sleep being disturbed? And once you start acknowledging, okay, like I have all of these sleep efforts tied to my sleep, to my evening routine, I'm avoiding times with friends, I'm doing all of this, I guess, elaborate sleep hygiene at night, I would personally say start just acknowledging that you can't actually make sleep happen. And this is where CBT-I often fails, because CBT-I kind of incorporates this behavioral element that implies that sleep in some way can be controlled under certain behavioral circumstances, when in reality, that just perpetuates the cycle of insomnia, because it makes the insomniac believe, okay, if I follow this rule book and if I do all of these things perfectly, I'm finally gonna be able to sleep. Because it's very comforting as humans to know, okay, my suffering's going to end when I do X, Y, and Z, or my suffering's only gonna take this long, or if I restrict my sleep, I'm gonna be able to sleep. When in reality, insomnia, or like recovering from insomnia, happens when we remove all of these expectations around sleep, when we stop having to control it, when we simply allow it to come back. And this honestly can be so unbelievably powerful, because in a way you can reclaim your life from insomnia. I don't know about you, but when I was struggling with insomnia, I started feeling like I couldn't hang out with my friends at night. I couldn't watch TV. Like, I would genuinely walk in front of the TV with my eyes closed because I was so terrified of blue light hitting my pupils. And maybe you're like, oh my goodness, I do that too. And wouldn't a previous version of ourselves say like, okay, what the hell is actually going on? Like, why are you actually shielding your eyes from the TV? Like, the number of times that before insomnia I had fallen asleep watching a movie is proof that nothing's going to happen if I absorb a little bit of blue light. Anyway, point being, start looking into what are these sleep behaviors or sleep efforts that you have started implementing, and are you doing these genuinely because you enjoy them? Because if you enjoy a specific night ritual, if you like to journal, if you like to meditate, if you like to avoid your phone, 100% do that. That's fantastic. But if you're doing it because you're trying to make sleep happen, maybe have a think as to why you feel like you need to do that in the first place. Okay, number 3, and I speak about this with every single one of my clients, and it's something I had to go through myself, is stop talking about sleep. And I know that this is going to be so difficult, and it goes hand in hand with stop Googling your insomnia symptoms. And it's going to feel counterintuitive, because if you are struggling, if you feel like something is wrong, it is our natural human instinct to want to find connection with other people. We want to try and find other people who understand our struggle. So naturally, when people are going to ask us about our sleep, because people ask about sleep all the time, not sure why or why we even started doing that, you're going to say like, oh no, I haven't been sleeping, or no, I still have this issue. And that other person who knows nothing about insomnia, nothing about what you're experiencing, is going to have some kind of emotional reaction of like, oh my goodness, I don't know how you do it. I wouldn't be able to function. If I sleep 6 hours, my day is ruined. And you, as an already anxious person, anxious around sleep, is hearing all of this external input, and it's reconfirming to your brain that something is wrong. And that's going to perpetuate the cycle of insomnia, because your brain is constantly trying to either prove or disprove that wakefulness is a threat, because it has already identified it as it. And whenever you have external stimulus and all of these external opinions around sleep, you're simply going to reconfirm to your brain that something is wrong, which then means that sleep needs to be controlled, that this needs to be avoided, that the fear is inevitable, that something bad's going to happen, that you are broken, etc., etc., etc. And I'm saying you don't have to lie about it. When I was personally struggling with insomnia, I had a partner at the time who wasn't the nicest person, but he at one point said, I'm done with talking about your sleep. And that kind of like set the boundary for me. And I started realizing that even though I had this natural inclination that I wanted to talk about sleep, it still kind of like put the brakes on me being able to talk about it. And I realized that the less I talked about it, the more I was able to focus on my life and the things that I actually could control. And that's the thing with talking about sleep. It's taking back control of the dialogue that is your own life and not let sleep dictate every single conversation, every single thought, your work with your colleagues, your football practice with your mates, whatever it is. Sleep doesn't have to be the center pillar of your life. And the more you actually start taking control of your life, you also start to realize, wow, this thing that I have pinpointed as a threat isn't as big of a threat as I've made it out to be. Number 4, what do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night? Or what do you do when it feels like it's been hours of you just lying, tossing and turning at night? And what is the first thing you do? And I'm going to take a wild guess, but you probably check the clock. You're probably checking the clock every 30 minutes and it's a reconfirmation of like, wow, I'm still awake, or wow, I've woken up at the exact same time for 5 days in a row, and that feels concerning. And that's what watching the clock does to you. It increases monitoring. It increases the perception that something is wrong, that you are not getting the sleep that you need. And it feels in the moment almost like satisfying to want to check the clock because you have like an inkling of hope of like, oh my goodness, maybe it's been 7 hours. And then you check the clock and it's probably been 30 minutes and that just feels soul crushing. So why would you do that to yourself? I would personally suggest set a time every single night. It can be your bedtime where you're going to leave your phone nowhere near your bed. Basically meaning you don't even have the opportunity to check the clock. And if you have a clock by your bedside table, I don't know, try your best to like maybe remove it. And at the beginning, this may feel difficult. I have clients who have said to me like, oh, I know that we spoke about not looking at the clock, but I'm still checking the clock. And that's also okay. Like also, this isn't a journey of being perfect. It's just trying your best to be consistent and meeting yourself with kindness and compassion when you can't be. Because sometimes our thoughts and our impulses definitely get the best of us. But I'm definitely encouraging you to set aside a time every single night where you're not going to look at the clock at all, because if you're awake or asleep, it doesn't matter. It's learning that sleep is going to come to us. And if sleep doesn't happen, okay, what else can we do with our time? But that still allows you some space and some time from having to monitor sleep. That, we have this impression that we need to get a certain amount of hours. And if that doesn't happen, something bad is going to happen. So if you remove watching the clock altogether, that's going to remove that pressure from sleep needing to look a specific way. And at number 5, have a little bit of self-kindness and compassion towards yourself. So many times, and I know this myself, it's so difficult to struggle with insomnia because you feel like you're not showing up as a person that you want to be. You feel like you're just not yourself, like you can't be the partner, the employee, the sibling, the friend, you name it. It already feels like you're not showing up as who you are. And that can oftentimes come with a lot of self-criticism, a lot of negative self-talk, and that in itself also increases hyperarousal. Everybody who I speak to tends to be quite the perfectionist, high-achieving person. They like to have full control over their lives, and then these issues with sleep trickle in, and the way that they have approached solving any other issue just doesn't work with insomnia, and that isn't your fault. Your can-do attitude, your fix-it-all attitude is not the way that this problem is fixed, and that is why it is so difficult. Because insomnia isn't asking you to be perfect. It isn't asking you to simply do things off of a checklist. In fact, it is asking you to do quite the opposite. It is asking you, how can you soften? How can you remove the pressure from yourself? And how can you also allow yourself to sometimes not be okay? We have these huge expectations on ourselves that we need to show up perfectly all the time, and that we can't be struggling. That if we are struggling, we are in some way not who we are, not who we thought we were. And who you are is never going to change. That's still inside of you. But insomnia is asking you to be kind and compassionate to yourself. Think about the way that you speak to yourself. Would you speak to someone who you love, who is struggling with the exact same thing, in that voice or in that tone or with those words? Most likely not. And the more you actually acknowledge that maybe you haven't been the kindest to yourself, maybe you can start shifting the dialogue to be okay with not being okay, knowing that this situation is not permanent. Anyway, I hope today's video was helpful, and if you need further support or want a little bit more knowledge around insomnia, I send a weekly newsletter. It is also linked below, and I also have a 5 Days to Better Sleep email series that is packed with all of the knowledge that you need to know regarding insomnia and what actually perpetuates it. And if you ever want me to cover a specific question, or if you have some kind of doubt regarding insomnia recovery, please go ahead and drop that in the comments, and I'll make sure that that is addressed in a future video. Anyway, thank you.